First, we have Kirsten Harrison, who is an HPCSA registered counselor completing her master's in psychology with research focused on COVID-19 and mental health. She currently holds the position of Institutional Lead Program Coordinator for the Applied Psychology faculty at SACAP. Alongside this, Kirsten has maintained a private practice for counseling as well as supervision of fellow registered counselors for the last 8 years, as she is passionate about the registered counselor role and advocates for this. Kirsten is also passionate about community and disaster relief work, with her most notable trip being to Turkey in 2023 after the devastating earthquakes were experienced. Our second speaker this afternoon is Melissa Davids, who is a registered counselor with the HPCSA and is dedicated to community work and personal development. Melissa currently serves as the Work Integrated Learning Coordinator for the online campus at SACAP College. Melissa has also established her own private practice with the mission of supporting and uplifting marginalized communities. Her passion for community well-being is further reflected in her contributions to a local community newspaper, where she writes wellness articles, and in her role as the host of a children's radio show on Saturdays, aimed at making mental health accessible to all. So without any further ado, I'll now hand over to Kirsten.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Steph. Really excited to be talking at today's webinar. To begin, let's explore what expectations actually are, how they impact our happiness, and what we can do to make them work for us rather than against us. Let's have a look at the psychology of expectations and actually unpack what are expectations. Essentially, expectations are mental models that we create about how things should be. They are shaped by our past experiences, societal influences, and personal desires. Psychologically, expectations are part of how we plan for the future. Our brains use these models to predict outcomes and help us feel a sense of control over our lives. If we have a look at how expectations can be quite helpful, we also need to understand how expectations can sometimes be what is leading to some of our discomfort or unhappiness. If that leaves you feeling a little bit unsettled, the good news is that you create your expectations. And I'm hoping that by going through this information today, you can see how you can shape them to make them work for you. If we have a look at the term cognitive dissonance, expectations are very tightly linked to this concept. Now, cognitive dissonance, it's something that occurs when there's a mismatch between what we expect and what actually happens. This creates a lot of emotional discomfort, feelings like disappointment, frustration, sometimes even stress. This is because our brain struggles to reconcile the difference between what we thought would happen and what really did happen. The challenge here is that even if the outcome is still pretty great and it's not that bad, just because it's not how we thought it was going to be and it doesn't fit that expectation, that sort of picture that we had, that feeling that we thought we would get, if it's not exactly that, the brain struggles to still find appreciation and gratitude for that happening. So it can almost seem like a failure, even if it's something, it's still a pretty good outcome that is there. So let's look at an example. Let's say you've been saving for something important, like buying yourself a vehicle. You've been picturing how it would change your daily life. You don't have to rely on others for transportation, public transportation. You'll be able to have a bit more independence in your life. And as the months are going on and you're saving money, you're starting to get excited about this and really have this idea of the big changes that are coming in your life because of getting this car. And let's say when you finally get the car, it actually breaks down within a week. The emotional shock that you feel, so that frustration and that disappointment, it's not just about the fact that the car is broken down, but it's actually because you're recognizing the gap between your expectations and the reality of what has actually happened. the amount of pressure you placed on this one sort of event happening, and when that doesn't follow through, it feels like everything sort of falls to pieces. Your mind then is trying to resolve the emotional discomfort and trying to sort of understand where things went so wrong. The key insight there is that the bigger the gap is between our expectations and reality, the stronger the emotional reaction we have at the end is. So if we understand that, and we understand the way that we can be affected emotionally, this is the first step towards managing our expectations and reducing the emotional strain that they can cause. The biggest thing to remember about expectations is that when they are realistic and rational, they serve us. When they're unrealistic, we are actually setting ourselves up for this inevitable feeling of discomfort. If we're aware of the role that they play, we can begin to set our own expectations up in a way that actually supports our happiness, especially on the long term. Something else for us to look at is the relationship between happiness and expectations, and looking at some of the science, I guess, behind it. So expectations don't just impact how we feel in the moment. They play a huge role in our long-term happiness. Research also shows us that happiness is about 50% genetic, 10% due to life circumstances, and 40% dependent on our intentional thoughts and behaviors. I don't know about you, but when I read about that, I found that quite powerful. Just understanding how much of it really does rest with us and can be understood and managed. With thinking that our 40% of our expectations are up to us, we have a significant impact on, or we have a significant way to manage how they actually impact us. Another concept I want to chat about and kind of link to this is hedonic adaptation. Basically, what this means is that people have a tendency to return to a stable level of happiness regardless of the positive or negative changes in their life. So, for example, even if something really good happens in your life, let's say you get a promotion at work, there will be a peak, of course, and there will be a peak where the happiness is sort of it just sort of increases and you really do feel that. But over time, it will drop eventually to your baseline level of happiness. The same thing with other significant life events, let's say that affect us a little bit more negatively, let's say facing a financial challenge. Eventually, after that event comes and passes, we will go back to our baseline happiness. Essentially, what we're looking at here is that single, isolated events in our life, whether they are good or bad, are only going to result in a sudden peak or drop. And eventually, we are going to go to our baseline. So we need to understand, how do we maintain a consistent baseline of happiness, opposed to looking at isolated single life events that essentially we don't have any control over, if you think about it. So if we look at someone that is maybe having realistic expectations, an example I can give is a person that is, finally able to make a home improvement. Let's say they've really been struggling with a roof that's leaking. Finally, they save up the money, they can do it, and they are able to sort of make the changes. They feel relieved and happy, but after a few weeks, the excitement fades, goes back to their regular routine. And that is an example of the hedonic adaptation, that even with these positive outcomes, it only brings temporary happiness. So something that we need to look at is adjusting our expectations. And I also think understanding if our expectations are realistic and rational and even achievable or not. If we have the idea that a new job or moving to a new city or taking on a new project will solve every challenge that we're experiencing and have like this huge overarching impact on our life that just changes everything, we are setting ourselves up for that disappointment because that's unrealistic. If we have a realistic expectation in the sense of, taking on this new job will allow some financial comfort, it will allow for me to be able to manage things in a different way, but challenges may still arise. Disappointments may still happen. I may still wake up not feeling great every single day. And sort of having this expectation of, this is something great and this is something that I really want. But even if it doesn't end up being the way that I want it to be, I have the skills to be able to manage whatever unexpected aspects sort of come up. That way, you're not blindsided when the unexpected happens, because in a sense, it's not really unexpected then. We've sort of thought about it already, and we've been realistic that these things can happen. Something that always comes to mind for me is the geographical cure, which is this idea of, if I can just move to a different city or a country, or if I can just move, everything will fall together and I will feel better about, all of these different areas of my life, and it will just make everything come together. That's a lot of pressure to put on just literally relocating. And our expectations are unrealistic if we're expecting that type of change. But if we can look at it and we can say, relocating, this geographical move can make this type of change for me. However, there are still some challenges that I'm going to be bringing with me to wherever that location is, because you go with you wherever that is, if that makes sense. You're still going to be bringing your stuff with you. It doesn't just disappear. Let's go back to the balanced expectations and chatting a little bit about resilience and happiness and how that ties into when we do have balanced expectations. So the concept of resilience, I think this has definitely become quite a popular word in pop psychology as well. But it's important that we really understand the role that it plays here. And for me to just break it down in a way that's easy to understand is that resilience is your ability to bounce back from difficult situations. It's how well we adapt to stress, challenges, or even trauma. Balanced expectations play a huge role in building our resilience. Because resilience, it's not just about if you have it or you don't. It's what level you have and how you understand that and what role it actually plays for you. So think about when we expect things to go perfectly and to just be ideal. Even small minor setbacks will feel overwhelming because they're not aligning to this bigger idea and this picture that we had. When we can balance our expectations and hope for positive outcomes, but prepare for challenges, we become more resilient and less emotionally fragile. And our boat isn't rocked by every single, every single challenge that or speed bump that crosses our path. So how to build your resilience is through a concept called psychological flexibility. And that's the ability to adjust your thoughts and expectations in response to changing circumstances. So flexible thinkers are naturally more resilient because they're not rigid in how they expect things to unfold. They can adapt to surprises and challenges without feeling completely devastated. We're almost using this to dilute our reactions so they're not so extreme and they don't feel so intense. And resilience isn't about expecting things to be hard all the time and sort of thinking that we can't celebrate or look forward to anything. We just have to expect things to just be mediocre, to be okay. It's not that at all. It's just about preparing for the possibility that things might not go as planned. So we reduce the impact of the emotional impact of setbacks, and we are able to recover a lot quicker because we understand the dynamic that's actually happening. I guess a good mindset to use is the hope for the best, prepare for the worst mindset, because what we're creating there is a mental safety net. We're kind of saying that this is ideally how I want it to go. I know that this might not be the case. And I'm giving myself a little bit of leeway to say that if it doesn't go according to plan, this is okay. I still have my safety net to catch me. It creates also a sense of control, which helps us feel a little bit more prepared for the unexpected. Another concept I want to talk about is avoiding the trap of idealism. And this is such an important one because here we're looking at the power of acceptance. And acceptance means acknowledging reality as it is without resisting it or wishing it to be different. It's about recognizing that some things are beyond our control and learning to live with them. Very crucial and important learning point here is understanding that acceptance is not this passive resignation to sort of say, okay, well, I'm just not going to expect anything because nothing goes my way. I'm just going to sort of leave things the way that they are. And, you know, I have no control or input and everything is just happening around me, because that sounds horrible. Let's be honest. So it's not a passive process, it's an active process. It means that I'm actively choosing peace over frustration. I'm actively choosing to accept that I can't do anything. No matter how many hours I spend overthinking or worrying or being anxious about this thing that I will never be able to change anyway. It's about accepting that is something that is fixed. It is not movable. I can't do anything about it. And it leaves you with a sense of peace. It's almost like adding that full stop at the end of the sentence and allowing you to turn the page to go to the next page, which is, what can I do with where is an area that I can actually intervene in? So there's a nice dialectical behavioral therapy, DBT technique or concept, I guess, that works really nicely with this, and it's called radical acceptance. And it means fully accepting situations that are out of our control. It reduces the emotional suffering because it stops that internal fight against reality, because that's what that worry and anxiety and pressure and all of those aspects that are those internal processes, that's exactly what it is. It's a fight, opposed to accepting and looking at it realistically. Because the opposite of acceptance is idealism. That is just accepting life, well, expecting life to be perfect or free from hardship. Idealism is having this idea of this perfect image of what life needs to be like, and anything that does not fit that picture feels like the end of the world. And you may think I'm being dramatic, but once we've created that picture in our minds of the perfect outcome, any deviation can feel like a failure or that we're not working hard enough because it doesn't look the way we thought it was going to look. Often the way we think it's going to look is not realistic anyway for anyone. And we're setting ourselves up with these unrealistic expectations that are never going to happen anyway, and then beating ourselves up when they don't happen doesn't really seem helpful in when we look at it like that. So an example that I can use that might ring true for some of the listeners and attendees today is, if you have children, let's say a parent, has very idealistic expectations that their child needs to excel academically. They're never going to struggle with school. You're going to provide all of these resources and tools to help them be the perfect academic student. And that's just the way that it's going to be. What happens when the child faces difficulties, doesn't really enjoy that way of learning? That's not the way that they learn best. They don't work well with others they're still learning their social skills in the classroom. What happens there is that the parent becomes frustrated because their idea and their idealized version of the perfect child clashes with reality. And if the parent was then to accept that their child's path may be more challenging than expected, there are some roadblocks, there are some other sort of pathways to consider, they'd be able to better provide support in that situation, opposed to pushing the child to kind of meet fit into this mold that they probably never going to fit into. With that being said, our acceptance allows us to release the burden of these unmet expectations. When we stop expecting life to be perfect, we can appreciate its complexity and find happiness even when things don't go according to plan. Avoiding idealism frees us from constant disappointment and helps us engage more fully with the present moment. So in conclusion, just to say that our expectations play a huge role in shaping our emotions and our overall happiness. If we can understand these concepts and we can understand how they work with us, we are in a much better position to find greater peace and a sense of resilience in our daily lives. Thank you so much. That's all from me for now. I'm going to hand over to Melissa.
Thank you so much, Kirsten, for that informative information. I think the examples is also really, really great. So we're going to talk about mindfulness. We're going to talk about mindfulness and happiness and how mindfulness and happiness actually plays a role in this journey. So when you think about mindfulness and happiness, they are deeply interconnected when exploring emotional resilience and joy. Now, one of the concepts that we're going to touch on is how this plays a role in a foundation for emotional resilience. And when we think of mindfulness, let's break down what mindfulness is and how it ties into emotional resilience. So mindfulness is the practice of paying attention to the present moment without judgment. And it allows us as individuals to observe our thoughts, our emotions, and our physical sensations with acceptance rather than reacting impulsively. Now, when we think about mindfulness, we always think about our relationships, either with family members or like in a romantic relationship. But one of the most important relationships is the one that you have with yourself. And when you think about mindfulness and being present in that relationship, it also speaks to not being judgmental when it comes to yourself and the things that resurface when, you start thinking about who you are, you being authentic with yourself. It's important also to apply what it means to be mindful in that space. And so it fosters a non-reactive awareness of difficult emotions. Mindfulness also helps build emotional resilience, which is the ability to adapt and recover from stress or adversity. And I think Kirsten explained it so well, like being able to bounce back when something happens or adversity takes place in your life, being able to bounce back. And through this practice, we can reduce the intensity of negative emotions and handle challenging situations with greater ease, which is crucial for sustaining happiness. Now, mindfulness also helps us develop an inner strength that allows us as individuals to remain grounded during emotional turbulence, contributing to long-term emotional stability and joy. So it's not just for now in the moment, but it also helps you to build for the long run as well. And I think it's so important for us to look at our mindfulness when we think about enhancing self-awareness and emotional regulation. Now, by being mindful, it allows us as people to be more in tune with our emotional landscape. And we can just go to the next slide. Understanding what they feel. Also, heightened awareness helps us as individuals to become more aware of our triggers and patterns of negative thinking that enables us to consciously shift, our thoughts and reactions. As we become more self-aware, we are able to skillfully choose our responses. And I think the key word in this is skillfully, because we get to understand which people, places, and things, not to avoid necessarily, but how to navigate through that, because you can only avoid something for so long. You really want to avoid the person or the place. But as life happens, you get challenged to face the person or somebody like the person or go to a similar place. And so you are actually forced to deal with it. And so what better way to develop the skills to deal with it, so when you do get faced with that situation, you know how to handle it. And so emotional regulation leads to less reactivity, which can improve relationships, workplace dynamics, and overall well-being. And those are the key components when it comes to happiness. Now, mindfulness mindfulness also teaches that happiness is not just an external pursuit or fleeting emotion, but a state of being. And it's something that we develop. It's not something that you just wake up, in the morning with. It's something that you work on daily. And by training the mind to be more present, us as individuals, we then cultivate a sense of calm inner peace that transcends circumstances. So regardless of what's happening around you, there's that innate peace because of you training your mind how to work in situations that is negative. And then also happiness in this context, more about how one relates to the present moment than about achieving external goals. And this inner peace contributes to lasting joy rather than temporary spikes in happiness that depends on external validation or achievement. So it doesn't matter if you did get the promotion, it doesn't matter if maybe you did do well in a particular task, you are still happy, not because of the events that happens around you, but because of your state of being. And then there's another concept that I think we sometimes we don't think that this have such an important role to play, but gratitude and personal growth. Both concepts plays a huge role when it comes to being happy. And we're going to break down, gratitude and what that looks like. Now, gratitude has the ability to shift our perspective. And what does that mean? So gratitude helps us as individuals to focus on what we have rather than what we lack. And when we focus on this, it fosters a mindset of abundance rather than scarcity. And by regularly reflecting on the good aspects of life, whether small or large, we can experience more contentment and joy. And this also eliminates that comparison that we usually do, like, oh, why can my life be like this? Or why can't I just have a bit of what this person has, And sometimes we don't say it. We might not say it out loud, but we are thinking about it. And that also affects your state of mind and as well as your happiness. And so practicing this act of gratitude, of appreciation, it trains our brain to notice positive experiences, which is scientifically linked to increased happiness and well-being. Looking also at gratitude how gratitude builds emotional resilience. When facing challenges or adversity, gratitude can act as a psychological buffer, allowing us as individuals to reframe difficult situations by focusing on the lessons learned or the support that we've received during these tough times. People become more resilient and better equipped to bounce back from stress. Now, it's important to note that there's a fine line between looking at the positive and minimizing your experience and your emotions, specifically when we're also helping other people and ourselves. So we're not saying minimize your emotion, but what we are saying is when you foster a posture of gratitude, you're able to look past that. You acknowledge your emotions, but you also look at it could have been, worse, but it wasn't as what you thought it would be. And so that creates that psychological buffer that I was talking about. And so studies also show that people who regularly practice gratitude report higher emotional well-being and lower rates of depression and anxiety. And this suggests that it strengthens emotional resilience over time. So as I said, this is not something that you wake up in the morning with, but this is training day to day. So you literally have to train your brain. If you're somebody that's very negative, or you see, the negative before the positive because you want to protect yourself, I think that is something that we also need to learn, and how to relearn our brains when it comes to gratitude as well, or rather unlearn, what we've been taught, and to relearn our brains how to get in a state of gratitude. Gratitude also enhances our relationships. Gratitude strengthens relationships by fostering a sense of connection and appreciation for others. Feeling valued and supported enhances the joy and contributes to emotional resilience. And when we don't have the sense of gratitude, what we can do is we project those negative feelings, or we could project those negative feelings onto others. And this can affect our relationships in all aspects, whether, as I said, a family relationship, romantic relationship. And when people don't feel appreciated, then it affects the relationship. And when you don't appreciate yourself, now there's a concept that I was taught in my early 20s about, and somebody taught me this, and they said, you can never take somebody to a place you've never been, and you can't teach what you don't know. So when you are not grateful when it comes to yourself and the relationship that you have with yourself in your life, then it's very difficult to pass that on to the next person. Hence why I said that it will affect your relationships, because you can't give what you don't have. And so if gratitude is not in your life, then it's difficult to pass that on to the next person. Then also looking at gratitude as a daily practice for joy. Daily gratitude exercises such as journaling or reflecting on positive moments. And this have been shown to increase long-term happiness. So whether that means you wake up in the morning and it's part of your morning routine to journal, and also maybe at night when you're reflecting on the day, and also just look at what you were grateful for that whole day. Now, sometimes we feel like, oh my word, this whole day was bad. But if you really sit down and you reflect, there maybe was one thing that you could be grateful for: the fact that you're breathing, the fact that you're living, the fact that you can still come home to a roof over your head. It's those little things, that we take for granted that actually helps us build long-term gratitude and ultimately leads to joy. And then also now we can look at personal growth. And what does personal growth look like? And personal growth can create a path to resilience and fulfillment. Now, personal growth fosters emotional resilience, and personal growth also encourages us as individuals to embrace our challenges as opportunities for learning. I heard something yesterday. I was doing a live with somebody, and this person said that they don't see failure as failure, but they see it as feedback. And I think it's so important for us also to grasp that concept when it comes to personal growth, fostering emotional resilience, because things are not going to happen the way we always plan to, as Kirsten said so wonderfully in the beginning, that we have an idea of how something is going to work out. But at the end of the day, we have to look, if we can look at that as feedback and not failure, then it sets us up to bounce back from the negative thing that happened to us. And so we are often, we prioritize personal growth, and it often develops a growth mindset. When you prioritize personal growth, you develop a growth mindset because you're not fixed on what has happened. And where you view setbacks as temporary and believe that they can improve your ability through effort. So you're not left alone there. You can improve, and rather seeing it as a failure, you see it as feedback on what you can do different, whether that's a business idea, a relationship. It can work in both aspects as well. Then also looking at personal growth when it comes to meaning and purpose, that also leads to joy. Personal growth is often tied to the pursuit of meaning and purpose in life, and engaging in activities that align with one's values, passions, and goals. It fosters a deep sense of fulfillment and joy. And oftentimes when you find people that are not happy, you often find that they haven't found what they feel gives them purpose, or what gives them purpose in life. And so our happiness often ties to our purpose in life. And so when you found your purpose, or what you feel you created to do, it directly leads to you feeling joyful, because you'll get up in the morning and do it regardless of what's happening around you, because you know that you are called to do it, or your purpose is to do that. And so when we focus on our personal development, we gain a clear sense of direction and purpose, which leads to more meaningful and a satisfying life. So a purpose-driven individuals. And that's what we want to be. We want to be purpose-driven individuals. Also looking at self-awareness and positive change. Personal growth requires self-awareness. Now, we will not be able to grow if we have a fixed mindset and we have this mindset of, this is always how it's been, this is how my mother did it, this is how my family did it, so I'm going to follow this. If we have that type of mindset, then we won't be able to grow. And what breaks that mindset is self-awareness, the ability to reflect on one's thoughts, behaviors, and emotions. And so this reflections helps us to identify areas of improvement, such as unhealthy thought patterns or behaviors that limit our happiness. And that comes in also with boundaries. Sometimes we don't have the proper boundaries, and that's on us. We show people how to treat us. And so it's important that when you learn boundaries or you develop that self-awareness, ultimately you set the pace for the way people treat you or the way that you show up in those relationships. And as individuals, as we grow, we adopt healthier coping mechanisms. It also strengthens our relationships, and we make better life decisions, and all of which contributes to an enhanced emotional resilience, which ultimately leads to lasting joy. Now that we've covered that, we are going to look at something that we often face when it comes to improving our life or even just happiness and joy, which is managing stress and anxiety. So when we think of stress and anxiety, managing stress and anxiety is a vital component of mastering our happiness and emotional resilience and joy. And these emotions can affect both your well-being for long-term happiness as well. Now, the concept that we're going to look at how the relationship between stress and anxiety and happiness, like how they all interlink. Now, when we think of stress and anxiety, right, they are natural responses to challenges or perceived threats, but chronic or unmanaged stress can have negative effects on both your mental health and your physical health. So for a large part, we've also just been hearing about, mental health and how stress and anxiety affects your mental health, but it has a direct effect also on your physical health as well. And so uncontrolled stress can cloud your thinking. It creates irritability and disrupts your daily life by making it difficult to experience happiness. And similarly, anxiety creates a cycle of worry, fear, leading to emotional distress and reduced ability, to actually just be in that moment to experience joyful moments. And we see even what stress and anxiety looks like. It looks different to what it looked like 10 years ago. Stress lives amongst us, anxiety lives amongst us. Sometimes people that show up that seems the happiest, those are the people that are suffering with anxiety and constantly overthinking. And so the image that we have of stress and anxiety looks different to what it looked like 5-10 years ago. And learning to manage stress and anxiety is essential for us for maintaining an emotional balance, allowing us as individuals to experience a great well-being and also the joy in our lives. Now, when we are building emotional resilience through our stress management, we think of emotional resilience and what this is, the ability to bounce back from life's challenges, as we said, and managing the stress is crucial in this process. Resilience doesn't mean that we avoid the stress. But it rather means that we develop the skills to handle it in a healthy, constructive way. And as much as we want to avoid situations, as I said earlier on, we can't avoid it, but we learn how to bounce back and actually deal with it. And effective stress management techniques such as deep breathing, mindfulness, or time management allows us and individuals to approach our challenges with a clear mind, more balanced, and a better emotional state as well. And this ability to manage our stress directly influences our overall happiness and well-being. And so you find yourself being happy even in the chaos, and that chaos and happiness can coexist. And for a large part of our lives, we always thought that we need to get rid of the chaos. But the reality is that if you are faced with, say, for example, you have a challenge at home and maybe you need to pay your rent and you don't have that particular money to pay your rent, you can still be happy in that situation. You might not have the money to pay the rent, but that chaos and your happiness can still coexist because there's other things around you, as we spoke about, that you can be grateful for, that can ultimately allow you to feel that resilience in that particular moment, even though there is a matter of chaos that is taking place. And people who manage stress well are better equipped to cope to cope with adversity, which reduces the impact of anxiety and allows us to manage a sense of inner peace and joy, even during difficult times. Now we're going to look at some strategies for managing stress and anxiety. And when we think of those strategies as well, managing stress and anxiety involves both short-term coping strategies and long-term lifestyle changes. Very important that our lifestyle also has to change. We can have the coping mechanisms, but if we don't have the lifestyle changes, then our coping mechanisms, we will struggle with that as well. So mindfulness and meditation. And we've seen that mindfulness is a proven tool for managing stress and anxiety by helping us as individuals stay present in the moment rather than becoming overwhelmed by worries about the future or the past. And the past has a funny way of still affecting people's future. So it's very important for us to show up and be present in that particular moment. Deep breathing and relaxation techniques is also seen as being very, very helpful. And simple techniques such as your deep breathing, progressive muscle relaxation, or visualization can quickly reduce physical and emotional effects of stress and anxiety. I know that athletes also make use of visualization, and also people that work in corporate, very stressful environments that is very target driven. Ultimately, visualization helps you to see yourself actually achieve, what you want to achieve, those goals that you want to achieve, and help you to get there. There's also on the physical side, as I said, lifestyle changes, exercise and physical activity. Regular physical activity is one of the most effective ways to reduce stress and anxiety. Exercise triggers the release of endorphins, the brain feel-good chemicals, which promotes a sense of well-being and happiness. And the other thing that we might not want to hear, but our time management is extremely important, and prioritization. So sometimes it can seem like everything is important. And I was telling somebody a few days ago, we know that everything is important, but sometimes you have to prioritize from the most important to the least important. And a common source of stress and anxiety is feeling overwhelmed by tasks and responsibilities. Learning time management and prioritizing skills can significantly reduce stress. Now, I like to make use of the Eisenhower matrix. I think that's an amazing tool to help us to manage our time better. I also make use of an app called Notion, and that also helps to, just designate your tasks, but also helps you to manage your time. Also, the Pomodoro method, it's an app that you can download, and you have different cycles of work periods and taking breaks in between. And it really just helps you to balance your time better and to manage your time better so that it can reduce stress. And then one thing that we want to talk about lastly before we finish is stress management as a path to joy. And when you think of stress management, you don't necessarily think of joy, but managing your stress can lead to the path of joy. And managing stress doesn't just reduce negative emotions, it actively makes space for positive emotions like joy and contentment. And when stress is managed, us as individuals have a more emotional energy to focus on what brings us happiness, whether it's relationships, hobbies, or personal accomplishments. By reducing stress and anxiety, people can improve their mental clarity and emotional well-being, allowing them to be better, appreciate life's joys and really just enjoy the moment. Just a personal example of this was, as recently we were planning my wedding, and I got married a month ago. And almost a month ago, not yet a month. But when we were planning this, we made a conscious decision that we're not going to allow stress and anxiety to take away from, enjoying the planning, enjoying the moment. And it really did help to show up and to be present and helping each other through that, to be present in that moment so that we can actually enjoy it. Because before you open your eyes, there's certain moments that before you open your eyes, it's over, the day's over or your birthday's over and you've been stressing the whole time, and so you don't really enjoy the moment or even enjoy the family time. And so also stress management techniques like mindfulness also cultivates a sense of gratitude and presence, helping us as individuals fully engage, as we said, in our lives and in those moments, and managing anxiety to build lasting emotional resilience. Now, chronic anxiety can erode emotional resilience by constantly draining mental and emotional resources, and learning to manage your anxiety through techniques such as mindfulness and compassion and cognitive restructuring can build resilience. So the way that you speak to yourself is very important. The compassion that you show to other people is the exact same compassion that you show to yourself. And earlier on, I mentioned about not giving what you don't have and taking people to places you've never been. So again, the relationship that you have with yourself, the way you manage your thoughts, the way you speak to yourself, ultimately has, a direct link to your relationship outside of the one that you do have with yourself. And so resilient individuals who manage the anxiety are better able to face the future challenges with confidence, knowing that they have the tools to cope. This sense preparedness reduces fear of future stresses and allows us for more positive and optimistic outlook on life. One thing that I just want to mention before I give over to our facilitators is definitely, if you are struggling with chronic anxiety, also do go and see a psychologist, so that if you need to get a diagnosis, this is outside of your normal anxiety and stress, to also just reach out for help to a mental health practitioner so that you can get the help that is needed. Thank you so much. That's all from my side.